All right. Welcome back to the Trust Your Worth podcast, the podcast that helps you tap in to the power of trusting your worth. Today, I have a very special guest, Erika, and I'm so grateful that she's here to talk about attachment theory. So, Erika, if you could please enlighten us on your awesome career.
Yeah, so I'm Erika Brinley. I am a marriage and family therapist. I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. My undergraduate is in family studies and human development. So a lot of relational things as well as just kind of developmentally how we function as humans. I am trained in what we call emotionally focused therapy, which is actually based on attachment theory, and kind of taken, Bowlby's attachment theory and put it into perspective as adults. And so that's something that has really informed a lot of my work. And so, yeah, that's what I'm here for today, is to talk about it with you.
Yes, I'm so excited. Okay, so you mentioned Bowlby, and he talks more about the attachments. I just did a full episode on what kind of anxious, avoidant, and then secure attachments. So we don't really need to get into that. But how do we discover our attachment style? Is there a way we can do it specifically by taking a quiz, or do we need to go to a therapist?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. It's interesting because I think you can see it a lot in relationships, especially relationships where you start to feel yourself getting close to someone, or start to get vulnerable with someone, or and it doesn't have to necessarily even be romantic, just any sort of relationship where you feel like there's closeness happening. Oftentimes the patterns in which you react to that can be informative of what kind of attachment style you are. It's interesting because attachment style, I think, has really taken off in literature and in, on social media and stuff. And I think we sometimes feel like we lock ourselves into one specific attachment style, mm-hmm. but really, I think it kind of depends also on the other person in the relationship, whether or not we feel secure or safe or not safe. And so you may think in this relationship, I'm super secure. And it's probably because that person in your life is someone who shows up for you, who you feel like they see you, they accept you as you are. But then you may find in another relationship, you're not so secure. And it could be it could have nothing to do with that person. It could be from past relationships you've had. But it also could be that person creates a space where you do get anxious. Right. And mm-hmm. So one is just kind of, to answer your question, one is kind of looking at the patterns in which you find yourself in relationships. Romantic relationships often do force us to see it quicker because there's a level of vulnerability that comes with being in a romantic relationship, but it can also be with friends and family members. There's a lot of quizzes online that you can take too. A lot of them, they make you pay, but I know one that I enjoy is the quiz How We Love,
nice.
howwelove.com, and it's free. Mm-hmm. And they don't necessarily say it's an attachment style, but they have different words for it, like a placator or a pleaser or a vacillator, or different types of ways that you deal with stuff. But if you look at the actual traits of those people, it can play into, these tendencies seem to be someone who is anxious avoidant or things like that. And so there are a lot of just self-reflection that kind of helps you say, okay, I have these tendencies. And also looking at your history with your parents, your caregivers, can often also help inform that. So there's a long answer to the question.
Thanks. No, I love what you said about how you can be in different types of attachments with different people. That makes perfect sense. I remember actually taking the test and I had to choose 3 people and they were different for each one. I was secure in
totally.
one, I was avoidant in one, and I was anxious in the other. So that makes perfect sense to me. I definitely had more tendencies towards anxious, but it is nice to know kind of when you know what they are too and kind of what you are, or what it brings out in you. That makes a lot of sense mm-hmm. to me. So that's cool that it's more fluid than I thought and you're not necessarily gonna be one every time. So I think that's important for people to know. So thanks for sharing that. That makes perfect sense. But is the goal always secure attachment? Is that what we're trying to reach for when we're going through these relationships?
I would say so. I think that secure attachment, when both people feel secure in a relationship, I think that allows for both people to be the best version of themselves and bring to the table the best version of themselves too. So I think that that's why secure attachment is just so important, because it really, a relationship can thrive and you can have the best version of the relationship when you're feeling secure in yourself. And the thing about it too is we can have secure relationships with ourselves too, right? Like being able to reflect and say, like, can I show up for myself when maybe like my caregiver didn't growing up, right? Yep. And that can then allow us to go into a relationship not being like codependent or avoidant, because we can recognize in ourselves. So for sure, like just having that security in you and having that secure relationship with yourself and in relationships is definitely the goal.
Mm-hmm. Would you say it starts more with your self-work before we even get into relationships? Like, does that component have to be there before, or are they kind of like interrelated, as in like, oh, I'm working on my secure attachment with this person, but I'm also working on my secure attachment with me? Do they go hand in hand, or is it like easier to start on one than the other?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I feel like in a lot of ways, relationships exist for us to grow, right? Like, I think that there's a lot of like friendships and, you know, like just friendships, romantic relationships, or relationships with family members. Like the more that, especially being a family therapist, like we are all on like systems theory, right? We're talking about how the world goes around because of the relationships we have in it. And so I think it is kind of yes and, right? Like I think it is like we can work on ourselves independently, but I know a lot of people who are like, well, I have to get myself straight before I can be with somebody or have a relationship. But there's so much healing that can come from being in a secure relationship as well, right? That having somebody that sees you as you are, having someone that's patient with you, having someone who doesn't, you know, when you pull away, who doesn't say, okay, fine, right? And so there's a lot of healing that comes from that. And so I think that it's kind of both. Like we can definitely recognize things in ourselves, but a lot of times it surfaces when we are in a relationship with somebody, to be able to say, oh, I'm noticing this. And if you're just by yourself all the time, like you may not notice those patterns. And so kind of both.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I've felt that there's certain things you actually can't even heal unless you're within a relationship context. Because it does involve practicing with another person. I mean, for me, that was like maybe learning how to set better boundaries. I couldn't do that. Just like I could with myself, but like not really. Like I wasn't sure how people were gonna like react to me or whatever. So learning how to do that better. Yeah, so kind of both, which is exciting, I think, because I don't know, if you can't work on one thing, then work on the, I don't know, there's just like ways we can grow continuously, I guess. So yeah, I think that helps if we contextualize that too and just be like, it is kind of yes and. Love the power of that little word and. Okay, so in your specific therapy types of the emotionally focused therapy, I was reading that book you asked me to read, and they talked about these dialogues, the demon dialogues. So can you kind of explain what that might look like, or if you have an example of that, and then just like, how can we break that cycle of demon dialogues? Because a lot of couples especially seem to get into these cycles of disconnecting and don't know how to get out of them.
Totally. Yeah. So, demon dialogues, there's specifically 3. Sue Johnson is the founder of, emotionally focused therapy, or EFT for short. And she kind of came up with these 3 dances that we find ourselves in relationships. And a lot of it has to do with our insecurities in the relationship. So the first one is finding the bad guy, or the blame game. Right. And so in this situation, both are kind of criticizing and blaming the other person for something, and creating this like dynamic of like, you're pitted against each other. Actually, all of these pretty much you're pitted against each other. And they focus on the other faults to avoid kind of feeling their own part in it, or their feelings of hurt and vulnerability. And so it's kind of like a way to just kind of block that and say, well, if you hadn't done this or if you hadn't done that, you're the reason why we're here. So that's the first one. The second one is protest polka, like the dance. And this is the most common one, where one partner is pursuing and the other one's withdrawing. So you'll see this a lot. There's always a pursuer and there's always, well, not always, but this is the one that's most common. And I see it all the time where like one person is maybe less confrontational. And so they kind of shut down and they withdraw. And the other person kind of comes at them even more like, well, why aren't you fighting back? Like, why aren't you doing this? Da, 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 da. And the more that they do that, the more the other person withdraws. And it's ironic because if we look below the surface, they're both trying to save the relationship, but they're going about it in a way that is very opposite and doing the opposite of what they're trying to do. So one person's shutting down because they don't want to fight anymore because they think it's going to make it worse. Another one's pursuing, being like, no, we need to get through this because I don't want to sit here in this state of disagreement.
Yeah.
But that, you know, they're both having the opposite effect. The person who is viewing the withdrawal is saying, you don't care enough to engage with me. And the person viewing the pursuing is like, you're just not letting me have my space. I'm getting flooded and you don't care. You're just attacking me. And so that's a very, very common one. And then freeze and flee is the third one. And in this one, they both emotionally shut down. They both withdraw. And so then they're, you know, neither are actively engaging. So if you look at it as a bigger picture, right, the find the bad guys that they're both kind of pursuing and going at each other. The protest polka is that one's pursuing and one's withdrawing. And then the free and flee is they're both withdrawing.
Yeah. So they kind of lead into each other almost.
Yeah. Yeah. So they just kind of like
progresses.
Right. And so the thing about these demon dialogues is that all of them cause us to kind of pit us against the other person in the relationship, when really the common enemy is the cycle or this like demon dialogue that we get ourselves into, right? And so in EFT, what we're trying to focus on is like, hold on a minute. Like, you guys are both trying to salvage whatever is left, and it's doing the opposite, right? Because we're avoiding our primary feelings below of vulnerability and attachment need, and instead we're covering them up with shutting down, withdrawing, or attacking. Because those are a lot easier to put on the surface than are our deeper needs and desires in a relationship. Yeah. And so, you know, that's kind of like our biggest step in EFT. One of the first steps is kind of identifying that within the couple and saying, do you see what's happening here? Like, you're pursuing it because you want to resolve. You're withdrawing it because you want resolve, but you actually both want resolve. And so it's really interesting how that's kind of where that attachment, like the anxiousness and stuff, that's kind of where it surfaces, because we refuse to share our innermost feelings because we're scared that maybe the other person may not receive it. And so then we come up with our secondary emotion, which is oftentimes anger. Yeah. Or contempt.
Yeah. So like, I have felt that so many times in relationships where I'm just like, this is the thing. If I say what I'm actually feeling, will scare them away and they will leave me. So I think that fear can be so real and like lead to those types of dialogues. So what's the first step? You said like recognizing it is the first step and sort of calling them out. Like, why are we in this cycle? Is that where we would start?
Yeah. So with EFT, there's like a diagram that I often will show clients, and it's kind of like a figure 8. And it shows kind of like how when one person acts, right, it triggers something in the other person, and then they filter that through their story. Their story of the relationship, their story of their victimization or whatever it might be, their story about themselves, their story about the other person, and their story about the relationship as a whole. Yeah. Right. And then we filter it through, and then they have a defensive reaction, and then we end up in this cycle. And so below that, though, there's in this diagram, there's like a line, and then the below the surface is the attachment needs and the fears, which are usually abandonment, loneliness, like fear of losing them, fear of and then the attachment needs are like acceptance, love, you know, being accepted as you are. One of the questions that the attachment questions is like, will you be with me no matter what? Like, do you see me as I am, and do you accept me as I am? Like, these are deep fears that we have in relationships, you know? And so we try and slow down the conversation and say, right now we're up here and we need to get down to the roots. Like, we're up in the weeds. What's the root cause here? And oftentimes, if we can take off that mask of anger that most people have, then it's really, well, I just don't feel like you see me as I am. And as we start to kind of share those slower, and then we really sit in it. In EFT, we really sit in that emotion. And so we like talk slower. We like ask, like, well, what does that feel like to feel alone in this and feeling like your partner doesn't hear you? And we just sit in that, right? Wow. And sitting in that then kind of takes down the attack mode and gets us into those feelings and allows for like a softening to happen.
Mm-hmm. No,
where we can then share those. Yeah.
So can they do it by themselves, or like, is it easier with a moderator? Like, or like, is it both? I don't know. I feel like that's a tough question to answer because I feel like everyone's different.
Yeah. I mean, if you have two individuals that are very self-aware, I think that you can definitely kind of coach yourself through it, but definitely having a therapist there is helpful, because it's hard to see something when you are in it, right? Yes. Like there's a lot of emotion tied up in these things, right? Like, and so I think a lot of times when someone says something like our defensiveness, right? That's a secondary thing that happens. And that defensiveness can then become this wall to not be able to really take in those feelings. And so having someone there kind of validating both sides and kind of lending that secure attachment as a therapist to those people can then allow them to get to those deeper things. And then once they're deeper, they can kind of then lend that to each other as well. And so it definitely is easier with somebody. But I think that once you kind of understand the cycle, and if you are two individuals that are very self-aware, you can kind of sit down and be like, oh, you know, in a place where you're both regulated, because that's the biggest thing. In a place where you're both regulated, say, hey, I'm noticing we had this argument again about X, Y, and Z. Now that I've come down from my dysregulation, I'm realizing I wasn't actually mad about you leaving the dishes in the sink. I actually was hurt because I had asked you before to do that, and you said you would, and then you didn't. And so I felt, right, I statements, I felt unseen. That gave me a reaction that maybe what I feel is important is not important to you. Right. And then if that other person is also regulated, they can say, oh no, like that was not my intent at all. I was busy. And when you nagged at me, like when you came at me saying I didn't do it, I felt attacked because I felt like I'm never good enough for you. And, you know, and then those deeper emotions can come out and we can really start to like
emotions.
Yeah.
I feel like that's so hard already because you have to be so honest with yourself and accountable to yourself to be that self-aware. I'm wondering if writing things down might be helpful for some people and then being able to share it back in a, like you said, in a regulated state. So, dysregulated would be like my high, like I'm angry, we're yelling at each other. That would be dysregulated. And then regulated would be like we come back when we're both calmed down a bit. That sort of stuff.
So I love using the analogy of a ladder, right? So when you think of being on a ladder, if you are, or like, you know, I'll be like, if we're at the top of this building, right? We can see, like we're in Charlotte, right? We can see the skyscrapers in Charlotte. You can see a lot when you're at the top of a ladder and you're above the trees, right? Mm-hmm. When we are there, we call that our window of tolerance, right? That is a space where like my blood is not boiling, right? Like my heart is beating at a normal rate. I'm breathing at a normal rate. I'm thinking clearly. I am not like quick to any real emotion, right? You're just in a regulated state. That's a window of tolerance. 99% of the time, if we're having conflict, we're getting into our fight or flight, right? Our sympathetic nervous system is kicking in. Yeah. When we think of that, you imagine yourself climbing down that ladder. Now you're like trees right here. Like you can't see anything, right? The problem feels this big. And oftentimes when we are back up our ladder at the top, all of a sudden we're like, oh, the tree's actually really small, right? But the problem gets right here in your face. And so that's something that I always work with my clients on early on is like, hey, where are you at right now on that ladder? Like, notice your body. Are you feeling tightness? Are you feeling tingling sensations? Are you feeling your breath is short? Are you feeling that your heart rate is high, right? And oftentimes they say in these, especially in that pursuer withdraw dynamic, the withdrawn's heart rate is like twice as high as the pursuer.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. Because they're just like, their anxiety is just like through the roof. And so that's why they're shutting down, right? You either fight or you flight. They're flighting and the other person's fighting. And so clearly we're not in our window of tolerance if we're in any sort of fight or flight. Nothing is we're going to be filtered through this lens where like our whole upstairs brain, which is our logical, like the frontal lobe, that's all shut down. And we're literally in our animal brain, where we're just reactive. And so, recognizing that and being able to say, okay, I need a minute to cool down. I will come back in an hour or whatever. And then notice again, what's going on in my body. Am I breathing normally now? Am I able to see their perspective now? Am I able to breathe normally? And if you are, then you're at the top of your ladder again. And when you're in that window of tolerance or at the top of your ladder, that is a really great time to be able to have those conversations, to say, I noticed this in my body then, but now I'm in a regulated state where I can talk about it. And if you start noticing even then, like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit of my heart rate racing right now, I'm going to take a few deep breaths. We're our best when all of our brain is engaged. And when we are shut down and when we are in fight or flight, it's not. And that's when even after the next day after I'm crying about something stupid, the next morning I wake up and I'm like, oh, that actually wasn't that bad. Right? Mm-hmm. I think we've all found ourselves in that situation. And so recognizing we aren't acting with our whole brain when we are dysregulated. And so, that's the biggest thing is that self-awareness is huge in then being able to be accountable and show up. And if you can't be right now, to be able to say, hey, I really I care about you, but right now I'm not in a state to be able to talk about this lovingly. And so, and I don't want to say something I don't mean. And so let's come back tomorrow morning after we've had a good night of rest. Right.
Yeah. Very fair. I mean, that was going to be my question, because there's that marriage advice, don't go to bed angry. I'm like, well, it should. Yeah.
It's
so
a bunch
I guess
of,
wait till you're both. No, that's crap.
Yeah.
Cause I know when things have gone down with me in certain close relationships, it's all I can think about. I'm ruminating on it. I think cause I am more anxious anyways, but I cannot breathe until we've discussed it and it's dealt with. And I feel I don't know are there tools for that to be able to regulate and not think about the problem for a bit? Because literally it'll ruin my whole day. I'll just be done for the day until I've spoken to that person and we've worked through it.
Yeah.
Any tools to get through that?
I mean, I can totally relate. That's why I'm a pursuer. And my husband, Darren's a withdrawer. He likes to sit on it and think about it. And then sometimes if it doesn't seem like a problem anymore, then he doesn't bring it up. And I'm like, dude, we still have to talk about this, right? This is going to drive me crazy. But I think in those moments, lean into that and say, what is it that's making me feel this way? What is it reminding me of? A lot of times our reactions will be bigger than maybe is elicited because of a past experience where we felt similarly. Yeah. Right. Our brain is really good at bringing up in situations where we have felt that way before. Mm-hmm. And wiring it all together. So I think of it as if we have an incident, a negative experience that happens in our life, we think of it as an anchor, right? And then anytime we ever feel that way again, that confirms a certain belief we have about ourselves.
True. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It just stacks. And so all of a sudden, maybe someone just says one thing, but somehow it made you feel some type of way that you felt before. And it rattles that whole string of beads. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden we're having this huge reaction to something that maybe if it was someone else, they'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. And so I think that's where you can kind of look internally and say, why is this bothering me so much? Why do I feel the need to talk to her right now or him right now? Right. Mm-hmm. Is it that I feel that I was misrepresented?
Yeah.
well, yeah, that makes sense because my whole life I was misrepresented. Right. And you can start to kind of really lean into what is making me so bothered about this. And so journaling is a great way to do that. Thinking back to past experiences, like floating your body back to like, when are other times I felt this way? And then recognizing like, oh, you know what? It's because my mom used to always do this. Right. Like I have couples come in where like one person will be like, yeah, like my husband comes home and he's in a bad mood. And I just like, it ruins my whole day. And I just want to talk through it. It turns out it's because like her mom often would be in a bad mood and she had to like tiptoe around it. Right. And so she has this like, and so I think we start to recognize these patterns in ourselves and then releasing what doesn't belong to you. Right. Like what can I feel about this? And what am I feeling about maybe what someone else might be thinking? And is that mine to think? Right.
Yeah.
Release that back to that person.
Yeah.
And then of course, like if you are someone that wants to talk it through, I think it's important. I think it can deepen a relationship, but doing it after you've done that, like flushing through.
Yeah. Like worked
exploring.
Yeah. Worked out like, okay, what's being triggered right now? Is there a way I can resolve this myself? And then what was the last thing you said? Oh, I forgot it already.
Like thinking about past experiences, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Thinking about past experiences and then like like coming back to your regulated self. Yeah. No, that's so helpful.
There's a lot of different ways to regulate yourself too, where you can, so one of the things that they talk about is it's your vagus nerve that is kind of something that helps you regulate. And so to activate that, you can like, cold plunges or like sticking your face in cold water or holding something cold. Those are all things that can kind of like snap you back into your window of tolerance. Taking deep breaths is another one. And like mindfulness, like breathing, like being present, like noticing what's around you and kind of getting more like present minded is a helpful one to kind of get yourself back to your window of tolerance. And then once you're there, kind of asking yourself those questions, I think are ways that, like physical ways that you can kind of cope with that. I love those like eye masks with the gel beads in them.
Nice.
Just like have it in your fridge and then you can take it out and just put it on your face and take some deep breaths and kind of like get to like a meditative state where you're more regulated again. So.
Oh, those are great. No, that's very helpful. Especially me as an anxious gal. Yeah.
I get you. I get it.
What about like, let's say if someone's more withdrawing, more avoidant, we'd say, what are some tools they might be able to use to like come back to a regulated? Cause like if they're shutting down, they're literally like, I need space. And then they're just alone, but are they like ruminating a lot? Like, I don't know what's going on when they're just like, chilling maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of like I said, a lot of people who are withdrawing, it's that they're flooded, right? They're flooded with a lot of like emotion and just feeling like I can't do this, and so I'm going to run, right? They're flight, right, in the fight or flight, and so I think recognizing that, and a lot of times, like even people who are withdrawn like that, a lot of times they'll even try and self-sabotage the other way because it's like, well, you're going to leave me anyways, and so like I'm to suppress the anxiety I have of you leaving. I'm going to basically make it happen. So I'm not anxious about it happening, which is ironic because you're doing the very thing that you're trying to avoid. But the anxiety is so much that you kind of fall into that. And so kind of recognizing those behaviors, one, like if you are pushing people away a lot, like why am I doing this? Oh, it's because, like I have a client whose mom was in and out of jail. And so she didn't have a parent that was around. And every time her relationship is good, it's like all of a sudden something happens where it's not good anymore. And I'm like, do you see this pattern? It's because you don't know how to have a secure relationship, right? So notice that in you, talk to yourself, like help regulate yourself in a way of like, this person can be trusted. They have a better track record than maybe mom did or things like that. Also recognizing like the triggers that you have. Like what are some of the things that people say or do that throw you into that so that you can be aware. And then if you are in a healthy relationship with somebody, you can say, hey, like I'm working on this, but also so that you're aware, right? Like these are times when I feel abandoned. Right. Yeah. And in a healthy relationship, that other person would be like, oh, I could see that. Like, I'm going to try and verbalize this in a different way so that you don't feel that way, you know?
Yeah.
In an unhealthy relationship, though, that's scary because that can cause them to use that as ammo. So it is very, very, sensitive, I think, in relationships. Yeah. But as far as like working on emotional regulation is something, right? So like, again, if you find yourself withdrawing, like, and you are feeling overwhelmed, like find those self-soothing techniques that work, like name your emotions and process what's going on inside of you. What is it bringing up in your past again? What are some ways to be mindful? And then kind of thinking about what are the beliefs you have about yourself, right? So in a situation, we always are coming away with some sort of story that we're telling ourselves about a situation. And so if you can kind of pinpoint, what is that? Is it that I can't get my needs met? Is it that I am alone? Is it that I'm not good enough? Like, what is the story you're telling yourself? And then can we notice, like, if we have evidence of that one way, can we also find evidence of it not being true in your life? Right?
Yeah.
And so, if you're like, oh, I always mess things up, like, okay, well, you're looking at all the examples where you maybe did, but now if we play lawyer, can you look at all the times that you haven't?
Yeah.
And allowing yourself the space to kind of reflect and say, yeah, I'm human, but I'm not all one way. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just kind of recognize that. And then hopefully having a partner or having somebody in your life that can help continue to pursue in a safe and healthy way, right? Like to be able to approach you afterwards and say, hey, I'm noticing this. Can you talk about it? What are some feelings you're having? I think a therapist is also very helpful for that. Like sitting down and be like, I find myself withdrawing and not being able to say anything in conflict, and I don't want to feel that way. A therapist is a really great person to say, okay, let's figure out your story and let's figure out how we can change that story for you to be more successful in your relationships. So,
yeah, some great tools that we could all use. A lot of self-reflection, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's so true. We do write this narrative of situations that are kind of untrue sometimes. Well, a lot of times,
right.
But I think, yeah, definitely taking practice and being like, is this true? I love that you said follow the evidence. That's one that's helped me a lot. It was just like, why my friends wouldn't lie to me? Like they're telling me I'm a great person. Why do I believe I'm not a great person? So yeah, finding those triggers and like trying to work those out. So yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I think that's gonna be really, really helpful. So, yeah. And yes, if you struggle, I love therapists. Please see a therapist. I think everybody needs a therapist.
Oh, totally.
Like, genuinely.
It's so helpful. Yeah.
It's so helpful. So if you feel like you're on that path, like, yeah, definitely find someone who can help you out and work through those things. Cause that's what's cool too, is like, you don't have to do it alone. Like it feels that way a lot too. Just like my emotions are so overwhelming. I've been there too. Yeah, but talking them out with someone who will listen kindly and fairly is like an awesome thing to have. So yeah, therapy. We love it.
Therapy, do it.
Do it. So maybe we've kind of talked about, are there other ways that like an avoidant can move to secure attachments, like specifically? Maybe we'll start there since we're kind of already talking about it. Or like, do you feel like that's sort of, we've already talked about some ways, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is just kind of, it's going to be gradual. I think that's the biggest thing is in any situation, if you find yourself in a pattern, an analogy I often use with my clients is like, if you're on a trail in the woods, you're going to see that the trail that is taken the most is where it's kind of flattened down and there's not like a whole lot of bushes and stuff you have to go through, right? Like it's an easy path. And so if your avoidant tendencies, if you've done them for a long time, is the path of least resistance. It may not be the healthiest for you, but it is your path of least resistance. And so what we need to do is blaze a new path. And that takes a whole lot of like being in your conscious mind, like being aware. And so, you probably will go down this path once and then go back down your path of least resistance a couple of times. But the hope is that the more and more you're aware of it, you can kind of stop it in its tracks earlier and earlier and earlier. until that path starts to get overgrown and your new path is like now trodden down, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's basically how our brain works. Like those are neural pathways, right? And our neural pathways that we do, we almost go into autopilot. Our brain loves to go into autopilot because it's efficient, and our brain is always looking to be efficient. And so when we want to change something, we have to take it out of our subconscious back to our conscious brain, right? And say, okay, I am finding myself withdrawing right now. And maybe it's like a couple hours after, you're like, oh shoot, I totally withdrew. Okay, I'm going to go back to that fork in the road, and I'm going to push down this one that's covered in weeds of, I'm going to call this person back, and I'm going to talk to them and say, hey, I noticed I withdrew in this moment. I'm working on doing this better. You know, this is what I was feeling, or whatever it might be. And you'll notice over time, it's slow and it's steady, because lasting change takes time. It took you however many years to get to where you are.
Yeah.
So it won't probably take you that many years to get to a new path, but it is going to take time. And so giving yourself that grace and recognizing, like, the first step is awareness. The first step is recognition. And so noticing, oh shoot, I just did that thing. Right.
Yeah.
And then being able to then switch accordingly, you know, and over time, naturally, it will be a new pathway. So
for sure. Yes. Be patient.
Change
does take time. I think that's so hard. It's just like, oh, I'm working on it. And hopefully you have like secure enough relationships so that they can be patient with you too, as you're like learning and growing, or maybe they're growing with you. So yeah. Is it similar for the anxious, like recognizing the patterns too, or is there something else?
I think so.
For an anxious?
I feel like anxious, they're often a little bit more reactive, right? And being able to kind of notice, again, you may react and say something, or you may be impulsive in that. But once you recognize you've done that, be like, oh shoot, okay, I was going down this path again, step back, give myself grace, right? Give myself love. Having a mantra might be helpful too, of like, I am growing, I am changing, whatever makes you kind of feel like you can kind of, okay, step down this new path. But yeah, same idea of just recognizing it, communicating it, recognizing it takes time, finding people, whether it's a therapist or a really good friend, to be able to say, I'm noticing this pattern. You know, if you are especially like an external processor, which I feel like a lot of anxious people are an external processor, where they have to like talk it through. And as you're talking about it, you're like, oh, I just realized something that I wouldn't have realized if I wasn't like soundboarding this off of you. And so finding those people to be able to say, I noticed this and I noticed that. And then, oh my gosh, I just realized this pattern that I didn't notice. And so again, having patience with yourself and then recognizing those patterns and, you know, allowing yourself that grace.
Yeah, for sure. This kind of leads into the next question. Like, is there work individuals can do to move towards secure attachments? Like, besides like recognizing, is there things specifically they can learn to like love themselves a bit more that will help in creating more secure attachments?
Yeah, I think one is a lot of our attachment stuff obviously stems from childhood. Actually, a lot of our crap stems from childhood, right? And so,
yes.
And so again, this exercise of like floating yourself back to even maybe like the first time you felt a certain way. And then now in your adult brain, being able to give yourself that is like a really great exercise to do. And if you're able to do it on your own, like if you're kind of self-aware enough to do that on your own, great, or go to a therapist and have them just say, I want to work through some like childhood things. You are no longer the child that you once were. And I think our brain sometimes hasn't registered that, right? And so we go into these reactive modes because that's how our brain has adapted to society. But now it's not adaptive, right? Now it's maladaptive in your relationships. And so being able to say, you know, whether it's like, maybe you just had a parent that, you know, did their best, but they maybe weren't as present as you needed them to be as an emotional, anxious child, right? Like going back to maybe a moment in time where you remember that and imagining you as a child and then you sitting down with them as an adult and giving them what they needed in that moment. And really saying like, hey, it's going to be okay. You're really sad about this right now. And you feel like no one understands. I understand. right? Because you're basically parenting yourself. And I think that's where, regardless of any relationship we're in, we are always in relationship with ourselves. And you'll find just even in your mind, you have like multiple versions of you kind of almost like going at each other sometimes. And so being able to quiet that and lean into each of those parts of you and saying like, okay, you are really upset about this relationship. Like, why? And almost having this like internal conversation with all of, like, have like a meeting in your head with all of the versions of you, like even imagining that and being like, okay, Brittany, number one, you're upset because of, okay, like, you know, and giving yourself that space. Cause I think a lot of times it's these internal children in us that are trying to fight back to something that they weren't able to get before in their childhood. Yeah. And so, but ultimately now, like, you're a grown adult and you are able to meet a lot of your own needs. But they don't know that yet. That part of you doesn't know that yet. And so being able to have some of those exercises, I think, can help you be more secure with yourself. And that's actually another mode of therapy called internal family systems, where you kind of talk to, so there's a book actually I would highly recommend called, I think it's called Internal Family Systems. And it kind of like takes you through some of those exercises. It makes so much sense that a lot of these reactive ways that we react to things in life come from some need that was unmet when we were a child.
Yeah. No, that I'm sure that's going to be super helpful. So like, yeah, because attachment, like we've talked about before, really stems from our childhood. So maybe just healing your childhood traumas will help you just naturally create secure attachments. Not maybe, it probably will.
Yeah.
No, but yeah,
and it takes time. It definitely takes time, especially if, like, you know, I have some people come in and then they're like struggling in their relationships, and it's like, well, no wonder, like from 2 years old, you were abandoned by your parents. Right. And so it definitely takes time, but a therapist is someone that can provide that space for you until you can kind of provide it for yourself and, you know, friends and things like that. And then, again, yourself, like, go back and, you know, I think those are just really important things that we can do for ourselves, for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to try that one, the internal family dialogue. And if I find the book, I'll link it in the show notes for sure. And the other book you recommended too, I'll link that too. Okay. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Any parting thoughts on how we can really be those secure people and securely attached?
I mean, ultimately, it kind of comes back to the theme of your podcast of just like self-love, right? Like, I really believe everyone deserves to have a person in their life that they know they can go to, that they know they can be seen, that they can be accepted as they are, that you can be fully vulnerable and they're never going to not love you. I think every person deserves to have that. And it's unfortunate that some people don't. But I think if we can do the work for ourselves, like, we can find that person too, right? And it doesn't have to even be a romantic partner. It can just be a friend or anybody where, and if you are someone that feels like you already have that, be that for somebody else, right? I think that's a huge thing, is like, you can be that non-judgmental person for somebody to be able to help them develop that security in themselves. And so, you know, just always remembering to be kind, always remembering to not judge, and always just holding space for people, even in our own discomfort. Because, you know, when people bring up things that are uncomfortable, we're really good at being like, oh, yeah, well, things will get better, you know, or like shutting it down. Like, you're making me feel uncomfortable now, but discomfort is where change can happen. And so just allowing yourself to sit in the discomfort of other people's discomfort, because that can be what they need to have that security as well. And so just be kind, be good.
Be kind and be good. I love that. Yeah, for sure. I can, as soon as you said that, like, having non-judgmental people that I can go to, I'm like, oh, I feel so blessed that I do have people like that in my life. And if you don't, like, I hope you find those people. I feel like as you heal yourself and trust your own worth, like, those people are going to come into your life too. So yes, be kind and be good. Thank you so much, Erika, for being here and for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I'm so excited to have this episode come out and hopefully be helpful to people. So thanks for being here.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming.
Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Y'all have a great week. We'll see you next time.